They say trust is the foundation of any relationship. For years I believed I had built that foundation with Anya. We met young, fresh out of university, both eager to carve out our paths in life. I was drawn to her energy. She had this ability to light up a room just by walking into it. She made me feel like I was capable of anything. When we were married, I felt like I had no interest in doing anything but being with her. For 13 years I thought we were unshakable. We weren't rich, but we had enough. We worked hard, saved what we could, and focused on building a life together. Most of all, I loved how we balanced each other. Where I was quiet and measured, she was bold and spontaneous. We laughed often. We planned vacations we rarely took, but always dreamed about. Then, one autumn evening, everything changed. It started with small, almost imperceptible changes in Anya's behavior. She began spending more time at work, staying late for meetings or team-building events. She'd always been dedicated to her career, so I didn't think much of it at first. But then there were the unexplained phone calls. Ones she'd answer in a hushed tone, stepping out of the room as if I couldn't hear. I brushed it off. I told myself she was just busy. After all, my job as a contractor often kept me out late too. It felt hypocritical to question her schedule when mine wasn't exactly predictable. But there were other signs. She started dressing differently. New blouses, tighter skirts. A fragrance I hadn't smelled on her before. Anya always had a flair for style, but now it seemed deliberate, like she was trying to impress someone. One night, as we sat at the dinner table, she seemed distracted. Her phone buzzed twice, and though she glanced at it briefly, she didn't pick it up. "Everything okay?" I asked, pushing my plate aside. She smiled faintly. "Just work stuff. Nothing important." Her words were casual, but there was a tension in her voice that made my stomach tighten. A week later, I decided to visit her office. She had left her lunch on the kitchen counter, and I thought it would be a sweet gesture to drop it off. It wasn't the kind of thing I usually did, but something inside me needed to see her at work, in her world. Her office was on the 5th floor of a sleek corporate building. I'd only been there once before, during a holiday party years ago. The receptionist greeted me warmly and called up to her desk. "She's not in the office right now," the receptionist said after a brief pause. I frowned. "She's supposed to be in a meeting." "She left about an hour ago. Do you want me to leave the lunch for her?" I shook my head, muttering a quick thanks as I turned to leave. An hour ago. Where could she be? That night, I didn't ask her about it. I told myself there had to be an explanation. But doubt crept in, a slow, gnawing sensation I couldn't shake. The following days, I noticed more inconsistencies. Times she said she'd be one place but wasn't. Calls she'd dismiss as wrong numbers. Messages she'd delete before I could see them. Then came the breaking point. It was a Friday evening. I had come home early, hoping to surprise her with dinner. I set the table, lit a few candles, and poured her favorite red wine. But when she walked through the door, her expression wasn't one of delight. It was shock. "Oh," she said, forcing a smile. "This is unexpected." I leaned in to kiss her, but she turned her head slightly. That was when I caught it, the faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine. "You smell different," I said, my voice betraying my attempt to sound casual. Her face flushed. "One of my co-workers hugged me goodbye," she said too quickly. "He must wear too much cologne." "Which co-worker?" She hesitated, her fingers gripping the strap of her handbag. "Mikhail, you don't know him." It was a lie. I could see it in her eyes. That night, while she showered, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I unlocked her phone. My hands shook as I scrolled through her messages, looking for something, anything, that would confirm my growing suspicion. It didn't take long to find it. 7. Final unit. The messages weren't hidden. She hadn't even tried to disguise them. They were from someone named M. The words were explicit, the kind of things you don't write unless you're deeply involved with someone. The last message read, "I can't stop thinking about this afternoon. Same time next week?" I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. Over the next few days, I became a man I didn't recognize. I tracked her movements, noting every time her story didn't align with her actions. I even followed her once, staying far enough behind to avoid detection. She met him at a small cafe on the other side of town. They sat in a corner booth, laughing like teenagers. At one point, she reached across the table to touch his hand. I watched through the window, feeling both numb and sick. When I finally confronted her, it was late on a Sunday night. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Mabel." "Anya," I said, my voice steady but cold. "Who's Mikhail?" Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. "What are you talking about? Don't lie to me." I pulled out her phone, opened the messages, and tossed it onto the coffee table. Her face drained of color. For a moment she didn't say anything. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I'd prepared for this moment, but hearing her admit it shattered something inside me. "How long?" I asked. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of sneaking around behind my back. "Oi," my voice cracked. She looked away, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know. I didn't mean for it to happen. For me, you didn't mean for it to happen." I laughed bitterly. "What, you just tripped and fell into his arms?" The weeks that followed were a blur. I moved into a friend's spare room while we figured out the logistics of separating. I'd thought the hardest part would be losing her, but it wasn't. It was realizing how much of myself I'd lost in the process. People say betrayal changes you. It's true. It makes you question everything. Every smile, every touch, every word you once believed. It leaves you wondering if you'll ever be able to trust again. As for Anya, I don't know where she is now. Last I heard, she quit her job and moved to another city. Maybe she's happy. Maybe she regrets what she did. And what she is. But me?